Why were we going over there? We don't know. You're going to Siberia. So that's all we knew. Well, I was 21 years old, so I said, well, bring on Siberia. I was in an adventurous mood. I was wearing an American uniform, and I thought, well, I'm in the Army. Sure, I want to go. Who wouldn't?
The Bolsheviks would be to create a state of war into which the United States could not enter without a formal declaration by Congress. So I could not send a man to Russia even if I wanted to, which I do not.
Cable indicates State Department has heard that Soviet leaders acting under direction of German General Staff.
Regards suggestion of German-controlled Soviet government as absurd and impossible. If Washington credits this contention, why are we wasting time representing U.S. here in Moscow?
The French and English are undoubtedly trying to get the Allied forces committed to some act which will result in the establishment of a new Eastern Front.
The Soviet government believes America can prevent hostile intervention, and if Japan advances, it means America has consented.
This dispatch contains the policy of the United States and Russia. You ought to follow it. Watch your step. You'll be walking on eggs loaded with dynamite. God bless you, and goodbye.
Before the war ended in the West, the Bolsheviks had made peace with Germany. Then the Allies landed in Russia, one by one. Japan was first and backed local adventurers like the Cossack Kalmykov. The Allies also supported leaders like the former Admiral Kolchak, who hoped to unite anti-Bolsheviks and defeat the Reds. At his side was a Czech Legion, former Tsarist soldiers controlling the single-track railway linking European and Far Eastern Russia. When the war ended in Europe in November 1918, American and other Allied troops remained in North Russia and Siberia. Russia was torn by catastrophic revolution and civil war. Many anti-Bolsheviks, banking on Allied support against the new Moscow government, sought to topple the Bolsheviks.
The original agreement was Vladivostok would be the port of entry. America and Japan would send the bulk of the forces to Siberia. That in no case would either one of these nations exceed 10,000 men. That the other Allied nations would have a representative group, like the British and the French and the Canadians. You see what I mean? See, nothing was prepared for this. We didn't even have a place to take a bath for 3 months after we got over there. For instance, the coat I got had a date in it when the contract was let in someplace in New Jersey, I think, New York or New Jersey. And that date was after we went over there. So you see, the equipment they had was that late coming. an unknown thing. I never been to a foreign port. The hills and the buildings on them, you know what I mean? And you look over there with a kind of a sense of awe. The word cosmopolitan does apply. There was, according to reports, 1 million, it could have been 2 million, I don't know, refugees from Vladivostok about the time we left. Where they all slept, there wasn't big enough, I know. But anyway, it was more than crowded. It was just, well, it was, where does water go when you turn it loose? It goes someplace. And that's where the refugees went. In the daytime, there's a lot of people. At nighttime, they clear out. Pretty much because they don't want to get shot and knives and one thing, nothing. The Cossacks, or Kazakhs as they call them, are peculiar to Russia. They're Russians, but they're horsemen. Kalmykov was a Cossack, but a Cossack not under the command of a guy like Kalmykov, I think was an entirely different man. But they had a murderer at their head. A few men deployed over a great area. It's pretty thin. Every American soldier over there, if there was any kind of a concerted action plan, could have been killed in one day. If they'd wanted to kill them all overnight, they could have. And this is just what would have happened if we had a general over there, General Graves. He went over there, and Wilson told him that he was to go by his orders, and he did. And the Allied forces, particularly the British, they tried to get Graves to enter into certain things, you know what I mean, of a military nature. What's a man going to do with less than 10,000 troops? Well, he would have lasted about 10 minutes. See? So Graves was over there for a different purpose, and he wouldn't listen to any of these Allied commanders. See? Graves would not go for this and further implicate this whole country.
Graves, in Vladivostok, found himself in the middle of a baffling civil war, a merry-go-round ringed with Russian partisans, interventionist-minded allies, and anti-Bolshevik American diplomats. President Wilson had instructed Graves not to interfere in Russian internal affairs.
We didn't go over there to fight. No, we didn't go over there to fight. We went over there to protect American property. We went over there to be helpful to the people. Had a lot of German prisoners there. It was housed in one of these Walden locomotive places to protect a lot of property. It was on the docks over there in crates that had never been opened, a few automobiles included, to see that these rifles and one thing another, stuff on the docks there were not confiscated by rebels or bandits or anyone and get into the wrong hands, because with the revolution going on, it was kind of bad stuff to have laying around. The first friction came with the Americans and the Japanese. Japan probably didn't enter World War I until she knew who was going to win. The Japanese military machine was a very arrogant group. And they couldn't have been any more arrogant than they were, you know. They found, according to reports that seemed to be prevalent and everyone kind of agreed on, There's about 70,000 extra Japanese on the soil. They didn't go through Vladivostok. They went up the coast someplace. They put them in small boats and put them on the land. They were sending a Red Cross train with supplies for Omsk. Oh, it must have been about 3,500 miles from Vladivostok. It was said that some of these cars contained ammunition and rifles for Kolchak. We found out later that maybe they knew. The train that followed our train was blown up. Now, when I was through Harbin, it was going out, our train was not up close to the station. The Japanese soldiers come down there and wouldn't let any of us off the train, not even go down the steps and stand up. And here, coming up to our cars, were victims of typhus and cholera. One man had come up there to our car. He was so near dead he couldn't talk. He wanted to know if we had anything to eat. They took this bread can and they got about half of a palm full of crumbs to give him. He didn't even have enough strength to put the crumbs in his mouth. And then he fell down dead. Had some of these cars. Semyonov had some of them. They just went out and they move into a village along the railroad, train their guns on them, and they say, well, you people live here in this village, we want you to do certain things, and if you don't do it, we're going to blow the hell out of you. And in some cases, they did. The Czechs, they were way down toward Vladivostok, thousands of them. And the intention of the greatest percentage of them was to get out of that country by going clear to the east coast of Vladivostok and get back to Czechoslovakia and then fight on the Allied side. Nobody knew what they were doing over there. It had never been explained to them. Who was there to explain it? The engineers would get the trains going and they'd jump out and let the whole train go to hell. And when I say go to hell, this is a good way to do it. Just engineer and firemen jump out. There goes the train. Conditions of revolution, you know, they don't stay where they started. They just spread out all over everything, see?
We are not at war with the Bolsheviks, of course. We are fighting them at Archangel, but it is not war.
Part, I think, of the American expedition over there, Murmansk and Archangel, was to tell the people of the world that if Germany even wins on the Western Front, they might find opposing forces coming in their back door. How would you ever take an expedition across that country? Why, this is impossible, but there would be some people in the world who would believe this, which makes for a lot of scuttlebutt.
The government of the United States has never recognized the Bolshevik authorities and does not consider that its effort to safeguard supplies at Archangel or to help the Czechs in Siberia have created a state of war with the Bolsheviks.
Against her skin, she lost her mind completely when she lost her garden sin.
At home, the war-weary Americans faced issues like demobilization, strikes, and prohibition, while around Archangel in North Russia, the Americans, left under British command, penetrated deep into Russia. One American officer was actually ordered to join his command at Arkhangelsk, and the order said, via Vladivostok, though 6,000 miles and a hostile army separated these two Russian ports. There was no conscious liaison between the American company in the Far East and that of the Far North, each performing burlesque antics in fantastic sideshows.
The old Sahara prohibition
Consul General Harris was out in the field. Caldwell was stuck in Vladivostok. And whether they was in accordance with each other all the time, I don't know. But with a conflicting element that undoubtedly existed between the State Department and the War Department, they never seemed to be able to get anything out of there. Kolchak. It seemed funny to me in the sense that an admiral of the Navy had an army. What are we doing here? Who could they ask? Tell me. Even till today, who could they ask? Nobody knew. And if they didn't know, they wasn't in a position to answer. This was kind of like having a blind date with the situation in the world. And I don't think anybody over there knew when it comes right down to it. Communication was not that good. Who are the Bolsheviks? A Bolshevik is a majority. A Menshevik is minority. The American press in World War I always pictured the traitor in this country as throwing a monkey wrench in the machinery to stop war production as being a Bolshevik. But Bolshevik didn't necessarily mean that in Russia. It couldn't. Because you ask a guy over there if he's a Bolshevik, sure he is. What else is there? At the moment, I'm crowding very much. Scene after scene on account of the similarity of it. But myself, and like anybody else, you only get a short length of time to observe these things. You don't understand it. There's nobody you could ask, especially we Americans who couldn't speak the language. But we know from physical activities of people and the manner in which they speak as to how scared they are and what they're worried about. And if they were scared about it, well, maybe we should be scared about it, and maybe we shouldn't. But here we're still just a handful of men among a lot of strangers that have nothing to do with what's going on. And if a horde comes in there and starts to clubbing and shooting or whatever, with their knives and one thing and another, they wouldn't respect the American uniform any more than they respect the rags that most of these people wore. On the outskirts of Omsk, they were digging in. That means they're digging a hole in the ground, halfway down. Then they take the sod that they take off the top, and they use that as building blocks for about 2 or 3 feet above the ground. Then they cover it with a roof of some kind. Could be tin cans, shrubs, weeds, growth, you know. So they were digging in for the winter, because they knew there's no place there then, and the refugee thing is going to be worse when cold weather sets in. So they were all digging in. You should have seen the city of places like this. Who was fighting? Well, these men are hungry, and revolution is driving them someplace. And, they're going to eat anyway, if there's anything in the neighborhood. If there's anything on the farm, they're going to get it, right? And if you don't give it to them for their money, why, they would take it anyway, and if you got in their way, your life wouldn't be nothing, because they didn't have any guns. Well, they had guns, but not much ammunition. They're not organized. But you can kill a man pretty easy with a club if you don't know he's going to hit you. Along the side, there were paths, like a path might exist alongside a river. And these paths was one continual trotting of people, carrying stuff. Some of them even pulling carts or wagons because they didn't have any horses, or any other thing that would help lighten the load on the individual. Just lasted for days and days and days and days as you wandered on. Refugees. Are there any other people under conditions of revolution? Is there anybody else except refugees? There are none.
When the new year, 1920, rolled over the snow-buried villages and frozen hills of Siberia, it found there anything but peace on earth and goodwill to men. Kolchak had failed. The beginning of the end of his White Russian government had come on November 15, with the fall of its capital at Omsk. Russian officers and American officers were at odds. Russians and Chinese were kept apart by an American guard. The Japanese were burning villages. Kalmykov, their henchman, was still getting away with murder. Russian soldiers were deserting to the Reds in flocks. Close upon the Kolchak debacle, the War Department ordered all American troops withdrawn from Siberia.
I was in command of the United States troops sent to Siberia, and I must admit, I do not know what the United States was trying to accomplish by military intervention. I had often stressed in my reports the fact that the United States could not escape responsibility for these conditions, because the atrocities committed against the people would not have been possible if the Allied troops had not been in Siberia.
Some might have liked us more if we had intervened less. Some might have disliked us less if we had intervened more. But, having concluded that we intended to intervene no more nor no less than we actually did, nobody had any use for us at all.
I have had to wait for over 50 years to tell this story to somebody. Anything that does not have a future to it, what the hell good is it to anybody?